Scott just made the point just
Jefferson. Used to be a lot more secure, not just.
A little boy's body washed up on the beach becomes the avatar for a Syrian refugee crisis, which seems to have hit like a tsunami, as innocent people flee for their very lives, caught in the crossfire between an evil dictator and a brutal Islamic slaughter machine. But there's another picture emerging from the Middle East and from Europe. I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. Men, the same crisis has also been described as an intentional Islamic invasion of Europe, consisting primarily of, quote, military-age Muslim men, end quote, who not only overrun national borders and ignore the rule of law, but who rampage in the streets and threaten the very foundations of Western civilization. In this second episode of our three-part trifecta called What is Truth?, we see a global version of the agenda-driven news cycle we discussed in episode 1 about the Muslim clock boy in Irving, Texas. Now, Stephen Green, in the fog of war, first reports are almost always wrong. Is there any way to avoid becoming a pawn of someone else's perhaps intentionally inaccurate narrative?
Well, two things. First of all, Donald Rumsfeld nailed this 12, 13 years ago with his little 30-second or minute-long lesson on epistemology to the White House press corps when he explained to them in war there are known knowns. These are the things we know, and we know we know them. And then there are unknown knowns, which are the things we don't know, but we're trying to find out because we know we don't know them. And then there are unknown unknowns, and those are the things that tend to bite you in the ass because not only do you not know them, but you are completely unaware it's even a thing. And that's always a thing you have to be aware of. And of course, our press is so ill-educated these days. They're credentialed, but they're not educated. They scoffed at this very simple, very precise, and very important lesson in epistemology. And now we're in a situation against ISIS where we're just finding out today there was a report on Tuesday when we were taping this that a whistleblower has now come out from the Army. He was drummed out of the service. He was an Army intelligence officer because of unwritten orders, unspoken orders to make our intel about ISIS conform to what the White House wants people to believe. So that thing that can bite you in the ass, the most dangerous thing in war, the unknown unknown, is the exact thing that this White House is forcing the intelligence community to promulgate on the world, not only when ISIS is a festering threat to the Middle East and to us, but when we've got men and women with their lives on the line over there. It's a shame. It's a scandal.
Well, Bill Whittle, you, in the words of Ronald Reagan, raise a banner in bold colors, no pale pastels for Bill Whittle. You also know that a powerful image can tell a gripping story that may not be true. Are there any principles we can follow to help separate the wheat from the chaff?
There is. There's one simple principle, and it's being routinely ignored, and it's being routinely ignored for a reason. So let's just set up the question as it's posed to us, as we would face the question. This giant wave of refugees into Europe, we'll just take it as the example that we're using today. Are these a bunch of decent, hardworking people who have been persecuted and have a right to simply seek a life of peace and freedom and willing to work hard and cooperate and be part of the Western experience? Or are they a group of violent, angry, vicious terrorists, essentially, who want nothing to do with the West and are doing their very best to destroy it? And the answer, of course, is yes. The answer is yes. They're both of these things. There are people there that are hardworking, decent people who are fully capable of functioning in Western society and are trying to escape oppression. And they are also including large numbers of people who are there to destroy the West. Now, I'm getting to the point. The answer is yes. It's not a simple issue. The problem in the West today is that the news media has decided that they're going to make the decisions for us, that they are going to tell us those parts of the news that conform with their particular viewpoints and eliminate those parts of the news that conflict with their particular viewpoints. They are depriving the populations of Europe and the United States of the balance of information that allows them to make a decision. And Scott, they're doing it out of contempt. They're doing it out of raw contempt for the American people or for the European people. They have this elitist attitude that since they know what the real answer is, they'll only give us the real answer because God knows we'd all run rampant if we were forced to sift the truth out of this mess. And we see this all the time with these Muslim attacks in America, right? Unknown gunman kills 17. Oh, he's probably a Tea Party member. Oh, I'm sorry. That's advertised and broadcast. He was shouting Allahu Akbar when he pulled the trigger. We don't get to hear too much of that. Why? 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 Because these elitists in these newspapers in Washington and in New York believe that if the American people found out that it was a Muslim who shot up 13 people at Fort Hood or whatever the case may be, then the American people, the mindless savages that we are, will go to every single Muslim mosque in America, pull these innocent people out of their houses of worship and beat them to death on the streets with tire irons. That's what they believe of the American people. And since we're so dim-witted and violent and brutal and stupid, we can't be trusted with the entire truth the way that they can be trusted with the truth. So there's your problem in a nutshell. It's this elitist, left-wing, progressive belief that common people cannot be trusted with the full spectrum of information because they're too stupid and too violent to handle it. But fortunately, they're there to protect us from ourselves.
Well, we've all heard the appeals for money to help the Syrian refugees, and who among us fails to pity that little boy face down on the wet sand? But then we learned that his father was not actually a refugee, and we learned that the majority of immigrants in the current European tsunami are not from the Syria-ISIS war zone, not actually refugees. Sometimes we feel caught between the Charybdis of a conceivably corrupt charity and the Scylla of skepticism that turns a blind eye to catastrophe. When no one can be trusted, nothing can be done, and nothing really matters. What is truth? But that's not you, O legendary hero. Odysseus must choose whether to sail closer to the rocks or to the whirlpool, knowing that peril lies along both paths. Survival is never certain, but the quest must go on. In our members-only Part 3, we'll ask what is truth when it comes to the presidential race. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at pjtv.com, I'm Scott Ott.